So let's talk about dual plane turns with missiles, guys. So Zmin just denied that we are gonna have this type of turn being added to the game, at least for now. He said that they do not plan on using any type of dual plane turn, and we're gonna explain what it is later, okay? So adding this type of G load associated with dual planes, wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense for them. I'm talking like for them, right? So all missiles are still going to be modeled by single plane, and they will continue to be on the future apparently. So what is this dual plane and why this is a big deal? A lot of people have been talking about this for a long time, and I finally will do a video about it. So let's talk a little bit about what it is. So I'm gonna put an image on the screen right now. I didn't find who did this like explanation, but it is a pretty good explanation on an image on how dual plane kind of would work. So normally we have only like a single plane turn right now. How does that work? Well, it has just one value that the missile, if it has the energy, will try to do when trying to hit a target if needed, right? So the missile will basically calculate there how many G's it needs to pull. You know, if it does have the energy for that, if the physics allow it to, it will get to that max G that the missile have to try to intercept the target. That's how it works. It's just one value and that's it. But in real life, it is not like that. In real life, there is something called the dual plane turn. The dual plane turn would be basically a little bit more complex than what we have. If the target, by chance, for example, in a normal aim-9, would be in the middle of the two fins in a kind of a diagonal kind of situation there. Both the planes for yaw and for pitch, I mean, not that he has kind of, I mean, they're just fins, you know, they're not wings and then like an elevator or something like an aircraft, but you get the point, right? Both yaw and pitch would actually turn to the same side so that the missile could actually turn a little bit more. So how would that work is, like I said, if the target would be in this middle between the two fins, it would mean that it would be able to pull a little bit more. That's kind of how a dual plane kind of works, okay? Why is that important? Well, for a normal missile, like an AIM-9, that would mean that if by chance the target, remember the AIM-9 is a missile that is in its row axis stabilized, so it doesn't roll in its flight. So by chance, if the target would be in that position, it would mean that the AIM-9 could actually pull a little bit more. You know, we would be able to combine that situation and pull a little bit more. Most missiles that are stabilized by row, just like the AIM-9 is, would have that option by chance, right? So if the target is directly above the missile or below or directly to the left or to the right, the missile would be able to turn a little bit more and get a little bit more of a turn. If the target would be, you know, perpendicular to the fins, it would mean that it would turn a little bit less and be the single plane that we already have. That means that it would have basically two G turns of the missile. If it would be perpendicular to the fins, it would mean that the missile would turn, I don't know, the 30 Gs that an AIM-9 could pull. But if it would be in diagonally between the two fins, it would mean that the missile would turn, I don't know, 35, 40 Gs maybe, even being a missile that only turns 30 Gs on the stat card, right? So that's kind of the idea. So you would see a missile that it's just turning a lot more and then turning less, depending on chance if the target is in the correct position. That's kind of how it would work for a normal missile. But there are missiles like, I think the Phoenix in real life could do that, but especially the Magic 2. The Magic 2 is known to do this. The missile would row itself in the perfect position to always be in the dual plane ability to turn. What that means is that the missile would identify where the target is, and just like an aircraft, you know, getting to an aircraft, like a turn, right? It would actually roll to the direction of the turn and do that turn looking to the target, right? What that means for the missile is that the missile would actually try to remain always on the dual plane situation. That's why some people claim that the Magic 2 should not be turning 35 Gs, and it should actually be turning, I think it was like 50 Gs or something like that. I don't remember exactly the number that they say, but it would turn a lot more than what it is, because a missile like this would not be for a chance. It would be always trying to maintain on that position where it's using the pitch and yaw to actually do the most amount of turn. Okay? So that's kind of how it would work. Some missiles would just hit by chance there. Sometimes they would turn more, sometimes they would turn less. And missiles like the Magic would always try to turn as much as possible. Okay? The most modern missiles would do that. So then we go to talk about the denial. So they are denying that, and they are denying that we shall see some other things. Like, for example, people say that because the Magic 2 does that turn, and for example, the AIM-9 does not, they should do the, like, you know, the maximum, the 50 Gs for the Magic 2, because it is always trying to maintain the dual plane. So the dual plane is the main turn for the Magic. It kind of makes sense, but at the same time, Gaijin already said they are not going to do that. And for the foreseeable future, we will not see these missiles having two plane turns, okay? So, it's kind of sad, it is less realistic, but as well, I gotta say, it is a little bit more noob-friendly, I would say, right? Because, of course, these missiles would be way harder to avoid, or they would be unpredictable sometimes, like, for example, the AIM-9. AIM-9, depending on the situation, would mean that the missile would turn like nothing else, and then out of nowhere, it would stop turning that amount of Gs, right? It would turn 45 Gs, for example, and then 30, just because the enemy aircraft, you know, rode a little bit to a position where the missile cannot use the dual plane, right? So, it's a more noob-friendly kind of situation, but at the same time, it is less realistic, okay? It doesn't matter. At the end, we will not see this in the game, okay? For now, at least. The next generation of IR missiles is already denied. I already talked a little bit about that in another video. But yeah, they are continuing to deny that we will see the next generation of IR missiles right now. So what I mean about that is, you know, don't expect the F-16I, the Sufa, for example, which is an aircraft that normally would use the Python 4 and 5, to have these missiles, okay, guys? It is very, very unlikely that we will see any type of AIM-9X, Python 4, anything like that. R-74s, whatever, you know. We will not see these missiles in this update. Does it mean that it's far away into the future? Maybe yes, maybe not. We don't know. But for now, at least, it's denied, okay? It doesn't mean that it's not coming in future, but it doesn't mean that it's, you know, it's a little bit different. For example, the dual plane, it feels like a more long-term denial. It's for now, but it feels like they're not going to introduce this for a long time on the very least, okay? So you can expect your Magic 2 to remain as the main missile for the French, and also with no dual plane turn, which means still the 35 Gs that it turns. Also, the Phoenix, I think, with the dual plane would be able to turn like 25 or something like that. So a little bit more as well. So I think it's a little bit more realistic. I think they should look into it. But it probably is a very hard thing to do. Maybe. I don't know anything about coding, so yeah. But anyway, guys, this was it. Let me know in the comments what you think about dual plane. And do you think we should get it? For now, it's denied, but do you think we should get it? Let me know in the comments. I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe.